All right, we'll get started in just a moment.
I was told that I had to go. Just which button is it?
Yeah, it's just this one to go
That
to the
one's
right.
to go
Yep,
forward?
yep, to go
And
forwards.
torn out, yeah.
Yep. Okay. Okay, everybody, we might just get started again if we can. Get everyone to take their seats, please. Okay, great, thank you. Hope you all had a nice refreshment. I think we're doing pretty well for time. So thank you to everyone who's spoken already this morning. We'll kick into our next session, session 3, which is around community activation in palliative care. We have a few projects here in the community space and a couple of speakers coming up. I just want to say that Sandy Elliott and Olga Russell are both apologies for today. They were unable to make it. So we'll make up a little bit more time, which is great. But we will have their information in the packs, so you'll be able to catch up. And you'll also see that we've just distributed the showcase booklet as well onto the tables. And so that actually captures the stories and the quotes and the picture from each of the projects through the grants program. So without further ado, I will hand over to Gwyn Jolly to go for it. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. It's very nice to be here. So I'm talking about the establishing the Onkaparinga Compassionate Communities Collaborative, which is being established under the auspice of Healthy Cities Onkaparinga. That's an NGO that's been going since 1987 under the Ottawa Charter and the WHO Healthy Cities project. So we have... I should start by acknowledging that we're meeting today on Kaurna land, and I'll tell you a bit about our project. So you can see here our vision and what we hope to achieve. So the project is based in Onkaparinga, the city of Onkaparinga. We've been working closely with council, although we are actually an NGO. And really the vision and the plan is about making Onkaparinga a compassionate community, helping to develop those community supports for people who are facing death and dying, people who are experiencing grief and loss, and helping them to get that support within the community. So we're looking to make the Compassionate Communities Collaborative an independent organisation, and that's due to happen in August, which will be great. That's really our aim to do that. Under the collaborative, we've also got 5 smaller compassionate community action groups, which I'll tell you a little bit about as we go through. So what we did was we launched our project in November last year. We were fortunate to have Chris Picton. He was well then, wasn't sick. So he came and launched our project for us. He's also, of course, the local member, so it was great that he could be there. The first forum was really about raising awareness of the project within the community and getting some support and commitment. We followed that up with a second meeting in December, which was really about getting down to the practicalities, so about identifying priorities for establishing compassionate communities. And people talked about what they were passionate about, what their interests were. And from that, we identified, I guess, 5 groups of interest, 5 passions that people wanted to be part of within the project. So our 5 groups, I'm sorry, I should have at the beginning acknowledged that the project, as well as Healthy Cities on Coparinga, is also in partnership with Southern Vales Compassionate Communities, and Christina here is the chair. So Southern Vales has been established as a long time as a compassionate community, so it's been a great mentor for our new groups and a great example of how things can go. So they're the longest group. I've been around for quite a while now, three years. I've hosted a number of death cafes, some art groups, and are now looking at a whole lot of other activities. We've found that people want to go beyond death cafes, which are a way of getting people into the whole sort of notion of death and dying and being able to talk about it freely. But then there's a need to go on and do something deeper, something more meaningful in terms of the grief and loss area. So you can see there our 5 groups. So some of them are more advanced than others at the moment. They're all community volunteer run, so we have to go with the flow in terms of that. So the main activity so far has been the death cafes, and that's also involved mentoring people within the groups to run their own death cafes down the track so that we don't just rely on one person to do that. We've found that the death cafes are a great way to bring people into the project, into the idea. You'll see in your newly minted booklets a lovely story from one of our participants, Angela, who came to our initial death expo, and then we came to one of our death cafes and has really formed lasting relationships and friends within the group from that experience. We also, at one of the first death cafes we ran, had a young mother with a baby with a terminal condition. She has gone on to become a volunteer with the group, to form friendships with the group, has been a fantastic, I guess, a role model and a peer leader within the group. So we're really grateful that in her time of loss, she is able to contribute to help other people in that situation. This is, oh, sorry, I thought we'd gone on to that one. Something gone wrong here. Oh, I've gone too far. Sorry, there we go. This is an example of the art group that's been running in the Southern Vales area, with some feedback around that group. And again, people have commented about how friendly and supportive the group is. It's not threatening, and people are allowed to proceed at their own pace. So this is people who are suffering from grief and loss, have had a recent bereavement or loss in their lives, and a way of coming together over a 6-week art course to produce a piece of art and share their feelings, and again, develop those friendships and support within the community. Hold it up. No. Okay. So we are now ready to launch the new organisation as an independent group. We're looking to hold a public meeting in August at which we will ratify the constitution and do all the necessary paperwork to get that group up and running as an independent group. We have decided to drop the name on Coparinga and just become a Compassionate Communities Collaborative. because to reflect, I guess, the interest that we've had and inquiries from outside the Onkaparinga region. So rather than being constrained within that region, we're going to take over the world, basically. So that's the way we're going. So the new Compassionate Communities Collaborative will be an organisation that brings people together to guide and oversee community development assets and a strength-based approach to compassion projects. And that's really what we're aiming for. That's better. So our learnings and recommendations. Well, compassionate communities are really about people supporting each other within the community, about friendship, about support, about laughing together, about being supportive of each other. And we've certainly found within our community that people are willing to do that. They are very prepared to take on those roles, and we've had a great response in terms of our volunteers. However, life does get in the way, and I guess one of the learnings is that we need to really be very thoughtful about self-care, about supporting volunteers and carers when other things like work and study and their own health responsibilities get in the way. The recommendations you can see there, so they are really about, I guess, supporting and recognising the value of volunteers and community within the palliative care and compassionate communities space, and about supporting people to fulfil their own, about identifying their wishes, their needs and what they want as they approach end of life, and about them being able to put those wishes into fruition. So it's about empowering people to have the choice, really, of where they want to die, for example. As we know, of course, that most people say they want to die at home, but very few actually are able to do that. So it's about getting those choices available to people. Okay, and I've nearly finished. So these contact details are on there now. These may change, of course, once the new program, once the new organisation is established. So look out for that. And I would like to finish by acknowledging Christina and also Mark Waters up the back, who's been a fantastic project coordinator for us. And I'd also like to acknowledge all our fantastic volunteers and to thank SA Health for funding our project. Thank you very much.
Hello, everyone. My name's Melissa Westgate, and I am the Supporter Engagement Manager at the Hospital Research Foundation Group. And although I spend a lot of time in hospitals and palliative care spaces, we have a hub at the Royal Adelaide Hospital, an information hub, and also an information hub at Laurel Palliative Care and at Lyle McEwen Hospital. So if you're ever in any of those locations, please come and see myself and my staff. I'm non-clinical, which is a bit odd in this room, but I am a fundraiser, very proud fundraiser, and we raise money for the programs that all of you are like so passionate about. So today I'm going to talk about the Hospital Research Foundation Palliative Care, but also just give you a bit of background about what we do. So how many of you have bought a Hospital Research Foundation lottery ticket? Yes? So we have 11 charities under our group. The Hospital Research Foundation Lottery, what that means is that it runs as a separate enterprise, like a business and an entrepreneurial business. And that means that all of our operational costs are funded by the lottery, which means that when people donate or they leave a bequest in their will or one of your organization's fundraisers, all that money, 100% goes to the cause and goes to what that person wants it to go to. So as a fundraiser, that's very rare, and it's an amazing thing for us to be able to say that and do that. up here, we have the Hospital Research Foundation Group, Palliative Care, and also Creative Health. Those are two parts of our organization that you might be familiar with. Creative Health is art therapy, music therapy. They go into the hospitals with the tiny horses, and we have little dogs that go visit people in palliative care. So all those things that make people smile at the end of life, which those things are so important. We have, at Laurel Palliative Care, we have people that support our families and carers as well, and they can get a massage or something. All those little things that just mean so much to those people that are going through that. Just move on to the next slide. So we obviously we fund grants in vital medical research, equipment, patient care, public hospitals, universities, medical research centers, all across South Australia and nationally now as well. As I said, we started out in 1964 as the Queen Elizabeth Hospital Foundation, but now have transferred into the Hospital Research Foundation Group. And we have 60 areas of research and patient care and 11 charities under our group. So over the 16 years that the Hospital Foundation Group has been operating, $186.4 million has gone back to medical research and patient care services. So we're the second biggest funder next to the government, which is quite a huge thing for South Australia, which we're very proud of. The way we fundraise, so obviously the lottery, that provides lots of money into the system. But then from my perspective, the fundraising side of things, there's a number of vehicles that we use. So we just had our Giving Day recently. Modbury, Laurel Palliative Care, and QEH all had teams. And my team went out and got major donors to give as matchers. So those organizations within palliative care and those areas, the money that they raised was doubled, which means that money will go back into those spaces and they can do amazing things with the money, what they want to do with it. So the other thing that we do is the Tree of Life. So we are looking at having a couple trees of life in different palliative care spaces across South Australia. Obviously, gifts and wills is a huge, huge thing. And I know it's a topic that a lot of people don't like to talk about. I do it every day. We're talking to people about what their wishes are after they die and also their funeral. So my staff go out to funerals as well, and we attend funerals. And rather than flowers, in lieu of flowers, they can donate to Laurel Palliative Care. They can any place that they want to give that money, QEH or Modbury, they can decide where they want that money to go. And then we also have community fundraising as well. So how do we benefit South Australians in relation to palliative care? Obviously, this is not my core area, but Fee very generously put this together for me. So we improve access and vital palliative care services for underserved communities statewide. And improve death literacy, 22.25 million innovation transformational research collaborations. Obviously, collaboration is a huge thing for our organization. High quality care, complementary services and research, pediatric palliative care in terms of CALD communities, which a lot of people have talked about today, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander pathways, share stories, and we raise awareness. Obviously, if you follow us on social media, we're very, very proactive in terms of sharing stories. And there's just been some heartbreaking stories in the media recently, as you probably all know. But, you know, just getting the word out there that people do have the choice to do and die the way that they want to die. So, yeah, again, we can attend funerals as well and support the family in that respect as well. What are our top 3 priorities for SA over the next 2 years? Equity and accessibility, improved accessibility and affordability for all individuals, regardless of their geographical location or financial resources. A lot of these themes have come up today, and obviously it's super important that people have access to care. Collaboration and partnerships is a huge one for us. the communities programs and things like that, we're always willing. There's so many different aspects. We have events and fundraising. We have, the palliative care, like directed space. We have creative health. Give us a call and see if there's any way that we can collaborate with you, because we're always open to, new opportunities. And again, education and awareness. So our staff go out and they educate people who work in this space about different programs that we run. The LEAF project is a huge one in schools, life education and art feelings, which I don't know a lot about, but Fee Abraham would be happy to talk to you about that program as well when she's back. But yeah, that's about it for me. Look up our website. Ask me questions in the break. I know fundraising is a really hard thing for a lot of people, and there's difficult conversations about asking people for money, but, we do it every day. So if you need any advice, give me a call, and happy to support in any way I can. Thanks.
Whoop. It went on by itself. There we go. Hello, my name's Judith Lowe. I work for the City of Onkaparinga, and I'm probably here to challenge your idea that local government is the 3 R's, rent, rubbish and rates. And that in fact we have a commitment to public health and health promotion, and recognising that and the recommendation in the Lacey Review in 2019, we were approached to be part of a strategic grant from the Office for Ageing Well and SA Health, who I thank, in raising uptake and awareness of advanced care planning and advanced care directives in the community. So we call it the Peer-Led Workshop Project, and that gives you a bit of an idea about where it's sitting. And the 4 quad councils initially involved were Holdfast Bay, Marion, Mitcham and the City of Onkaparinga. But we are a small puzzle piece in a larger picture. There are projects happening in the Northern Councils and Charles Sturt, Port Adelaide, Enfield around cold communities. There's work with Victor Harbour, Yankalila and the Fleurieu Peninsula around regional communities. And we're going into Adelaide Hills, Murray Bridge and Murray Mallee around more rural communities. So it's actually a small drop in a much bigger ocean. There we go. The focus of the project really was to be community capacity building. It was to look at a new sustainable model that works at community understanding. Working on that self-determination autonomy. I'm part of a council department that is active ageing and disability. So that means that we provide NDIS, we provide community home support packages, we provide linkages and care or respite. We have a great deal of tendrils in a great deal of spaces. And our approach is that strength-based restorative approach of doing with our community, not doing for. So we wanted to establish innovative peer roles that could help sustain this project into the future, and really be a tangible demonstration that local councils can be a place you trust and a place that you connect with. And that's why we have our new little logo down the bottom, which is empowering people to voice their wishes, because we recognise that putting one council logo on a document suddenly made it inaccessible to people, other councils, who felt it wasn't for them. So we have a generic one now about councils empowering people to voice their wishes. So how have we benefited South Australians since we started? Well, we actually did a survey at the start, and we found out the majority, like the rest of the population, 75% of our older population did not know or have an ACD. Quite a few of them had one in their cupboard and felt a real lack of confidence in dealing with it. And some of the others felt it wasn't for them because they were fit and well, thank you. So we needed to take a different approach, and we developed a short, brief community workshop. People do not leave that workshop with a completed form. They are given the resources, they are talked through each section, they talk to each other, they talk to the peers in the room, and hopefully they gain confidence. They understand it and they know how to start. And we specifically gave them low literacy visual resources that they could scribble on themselves. Because again, that's part of the barrier. Putting something onto a form felt like it was final. It needed to be perfect. We say, just start writing. And we give them time and we strongly encourage them to do it. And if it all messes up, they can try again and again. And they can take it to share with their loved ones, their GP, whoever else is there. So that's what we did. And we've had over 200 attendees come to those. And we've done some, obviously, evaluation on that. They're very happy, 100% would refer it to a friend or recommend it. And we know that because we are overwhelmed with demand. We're just talking at my friends and colleagues in Compassionate Communities about our workshop in Wollonga, which is already sold out, and people are trying to book, and whether we book another one back to back on that, even though we're at McLaren Vale or at the Visitor Centre everywhere else that month as well. So we've made it possible, basically, and when we followed up the first 150, about 50% of those people within a 6-week time frame had completed their ACD, signed, sealed, delivered, and they felt much better. Another 15% were working towards it, and of course the rest may not be at the stage where they wish to or want to. Like I said, we do it we explain it. There's no anticipation that it's the right thing for you at this point in your life. We have made it about life as much as death, and I think that's part of how we have approached it as a community approach, that we're not aiming at people who necessarily have a palliative diagnosis or in an end-of-life journey. But there's still lots of those people who do turn up to our workshops, and that's where it's so nice to be able to share compassionate community resources, and we really have a very permeable barrier, I think, at the moment, between their work, our work, their volunteers, our volunteers, which has been great. So we're allowing peers to lead and people to empower each other. So we have about 14 volunteers to date. Some are from Compassionate Communities, but they're across the 4 councils. And some of them are simply people who've come to a workshop, done it themselves, and when I ring them up and they extol the virtues, I say, oh, you sound like you're someone who might want to come back. We developed some dedicated online training. It's about 30 minutes with our rigorous evaluation from our steering group, because we needed to bring staff up to date as much as volunteers. As a local government, we sit under the Local Government Liability Risk Scheme, and they are very risk averse. So there's a lot of conversations about risk, liability, disclaimers, who can say what to whom, and we've had to sit in the safest possible space. But it's really opened lines of communication about tackling death and palliative care illiteracy in our community. What have we learned? They really want to know more. People have got the message. We recently did a Your Say survey to just the Onkaparinga older community, and we had 1,200 responses, which is a bit of a record for our online surveys. And what they said, they want choice, they want autonomy, they want to control and plan for the future. So this is great. Communication is the key. If you look at literacy across the board in Australia, over 60s have the lowest level of numeracy and reading comprehension and sentence generation. So a formal form is very tricky for people. And we've just really tried to make it as simple as possible with deconstructing examples, easy language, and easy to translate for our colleagues in the north. Peers are super powerful. And a little anecdote, so one of the ladies who comes as my peer is a retired social worker. She is excellent at what she does. She has so many skills to bring. She would be wasted driving the bus or making cups of tea. So we use her skills in those workshops. And she tells people about her father being able to die at home during COVID because it was his wishes in his ACD. And that would have never happened, and his family would not have been around him. So people generally, and I've got another quote from an attendee who said, I walked in completely cynical. I walked out convinced, and I've told everyone I know. So that's what it's about. And that sustained staffing and resources are necessary. Volunteers don't necessarily support themselves, especially in a council setting, because there's onboarding and training and checks and flow of updated information. So without some anchor points, it's not sustainable. And that technology can be problematic. We were looking at this nice little training program that we knew we could share with our Quad Council, even though those other councils don't have the same platforms and don't have the same learning management systems. And now that it's going out to up to 13 councils, we have new challenges about how to get it to them. So yes, technology can be wonderful, but think big and think ahead. And most importantly now, we're going back to our volunteers and saying, well, how's it been for you? We survey them before and after they do our training. At the end of every workshop, they fill in a little form to tell us how it's gone, anything that's happened on their table we haven't seen. And we recently did a feedback event with all staff and volunteers saying, well, what have we learned so far? How are you feeling about it? And they generally said, we learnt a lot, it was great, the online training was relevant and useful, we feel confident with the support you gave us at the start. But now we're out there doing the do, we know we need more. We need some facilitation skills for managing participants, because these are group discussions. We need some help with managing maybe, difficult family dynamics. And we're going to add to some of the content and the way that we support these people in an ongoing fashion. If you want to find out more, as part of the project, we made a little community outreach video, which in 1.5 minutes tells you what is an ACD from the perspective of life and living, not necessarily death and dying. We did that mainly as a gendered approach to attract more men. 70% of our workshop participants are ladies, and they take the form home for their partners. And men like to talk about what they're doing now, and they generally like to do it parallel. They don't want, and most of the resources out there in this space are beautiful resources that are face-to-face conversations. That doesn't always go well for men. So that's a different one you might like. We've got our webpage. It gives you an update on the project. If you want to come to any workshops, they're listed under a collection on Eventbrite. I'm meant to be planning for the year ahead, but so you might need to watch that space. Our online training, our resources, which you can see at the bottom, come in a little pack with everything that's formal from SA Health on one side, everything that's project-related on the other. Just contact me. That's it.
Many of you would know I moved back to South Australia after 15 years, just recently in January, and I'm now thinking, why didn't I live in Onkaparinga? But anyway. So we thought we might give a bit of an update of what's happening at Palliative Care South Australia in relation to compassionate communities. There's been a lot of work happening on the international, the national, the state approach around this area for a number of years. And we're just trying to look at the strategic approaches. So really PCSA is looking at how can we be involved and support this space? How can we look at the umbrella aspect to it and support all these amazing initiatives that are happening, but trying to bring it together so that we're all working together, we're linking up with the people already doing it, everyone sort of knows what's happening. So I can flag that about 12 years ago, I think it was, there was a batch of us who met in Victoria at La Trobe University who had an interest in public health palliative care. There was about 10 of us across the country that all flew there to meet. And we talked about how do we bring this all together back then. Still, since that time, I think there's enough interest in the space. There's definitely conversations happening. There's lots of activities going on. It's just fantastic to watch and see, and it's growing on the international front as well. There's amazing initiatives happening, but everyone's trying to work out how to do it. We still haven't quite got there, and I'm not going to give you the solution. I don't actually know where the solution is, but this is part of it. We're trying to really look at how can we drive this forward. So we're thinking around how can we do this in South Australia. There's so much passion, interest, activities going on. We know the government's interested in it, which is fantastic. We know the people are interested in it. We know there's volunteers, community, the researchers, everyone. So how do we all play a role in this space? How can we be a bit of a leader in this space as well? And that's what we're trying to bring together. And you're all part of this story. So what does that look like? So essentially we're looking at this as the community stream, I guess, of Palliative Care South Australia. We're obviously the peak body in this space, an advocacy body in this area, but we're also recognising that it's not just the health services. Really, palliative care is beyond health services, and really upstream approaches are needed to support this space. From diagnosis all the way through to bereavement, but actually from, what did you mention, schools before. From early intervention, every single South Australian has a connection to someone experiencing a serious illness, dying, death or grief. Every single South Australian. Really everyone in the world, but we'll just go South Australians for now. So everyone has a connection in this space. It's not just SA Health's responsibility, it is every single department, every single MP, every single strategy in this space needs to actually think about this area. So how do we try and bring them all together? So this is what we're having a look at. What can we do in this space? How can we support you guys all in this space? So we've got a couple of things we're bringing in. So one is a project we did up in Queensland, which South Australia now owns, and it's being rolled out in Queensland, ACT, SA, and actually also in Canada as well. It's called Pally Learn, and they're just 1 hour education opportunities for community. We initiated this for community, but then there was quite a lot of interest from health professionals to attend it. We couldn't work out why are you attending this when there's already so much in education land in this space. But what we realised is a lot of that doesn't touch on just that basic philosophy of palliative care, the basic fact that death and dying is just a normal part of life. And how do we support, how do we just start that first step and then jump into those deeper conversations that are already out there? So that's where we really found just having a very simple approach to education in 1 hour snippets, and you can see we've tried to use a really friendly look and feel. The language around the presentations are really easy, and so we've had great feedback that that's a really easy way just to start the steps of palliative care conversations. This is the other exciting one. I just think this is the best name. So first aid, last aid. This is an international palliative care community education program called Last Aid. 4 hours, standardised, run in many countries around the world. So we're bringing that to SA as well. Our dream, like you might all guess that I like to think big, our dream is every organisation has a first aid officer. Why don't they have a last aid officer? Every school, everyone thinks about risks and first aid and all of this sort of thing. How about they start thinking about this space? Because this is for everyone. Everyone needs to think about this. It's life education. We're also looking at how do we bring the conversation together, what sort of some policy guidelines around this, how do we keep those conversations going strategically, policy, how do we all have research and evaluate this space as well. So that's the other area we're working with different groups. We're working with the other jurisdictions across Australia, sort of looking at what everyone's doing in this space, working with the universities, working also with Julian Abel, who's led the Compassionate Communities UK and is kind of known as one of the founders in this space. We're trying to bring it all together and look at what are the opportunities. How do we not reinvent the wheel? How do we work together? So that's really an opportunity there. So these are just some of those different aspects that we're involved in at the moment. We're also doing community awareness campaigns in this area as well. Many of you would know about National Palliative Care, obviously. National Palliative Care Week in May. Dying to Know Day is coming up in August, so everyone flagging that in your diaries. 8th of August, if I remember rightly. 1st of December is Compassionate Communities Day, World Hospice and Palliative Care Day. Council's here, so Neighbour Day is critical day, which can also include palliative care. So think about these days in your calendar. How do you just start conversations? You've seen an abundance of resources here today and connections. Just utilise those awareness days and start conversations going. We've got this really simple palliative care is, 10 things about what palliative care is, really trying to broaden the way people think about this space. So they're easy ways for people to tap in and think about it. Got this little card that talks about what would you think about if I was experiencing a life-limiting condition, what matters most to me? So thinking about that, how do we start conversations, get people to use their social media and other ways to interact in this space? Trying to think of palliative care as health promotion, because health promotion is not just don't drink or you'll die, don't smoke or you'll die, don't drive fast or you'll die. You can die well. And that's what palliative care health promotion is about, and we've all got a role to play there. So I think it's about raising the profile of public health palliative care in the palliative care space. You know, health is critical. We all need to get our pain and our symptom management under control, absolutely essential. But we also need to have the conversations. We need to plan ahead. We need to think bigger about this space. And that's really what we need to think about. Yesterday, whoever came onto the policy summit, we had Public Health Palliative Care International, the president, John Rosenberg, speaking, and he talked a little bit about this, that 5% of people's time is spent connected to a health professional in that last few years of life. Now, most people think, oh, I'm waiting for my aged care package before someone mows my lawn. I'm waiting for something to come into place from the health to come and answer my questions or my issues. We all know that that would be lovely, but there's not the budget out there for that. And it's not just health's responsibility. This is part of life and everyone's responsibility. So we need to start thinking, how do we empower the 95%? How do we bring it all together? And I think you're hearing some great initiatives and interesting opportunities today. So hopefully that really inspires everyone to think more about this space, not just in your workplaces. We're all humans as well. Every one of us has connections in our own neighbourhoods, workplaces, other areas that's not always just your professional space, but we all have skills that we can bring to our community as well. So how do you just start doing that? A lot of people think, I don't have time. I don't have the time. I know me, I've got a 10 and 12-year-old boy. Imagine how many soccer games I attend every weekend. But I still try and find the time to connect to my neighbours, my community, any way I can, just to say, I do know a little bit about this space, happy to help if that's useful. You know, we can all connect and give our skills in that way as well. So volunteering can be through formal groups, but it can be informal as well. And if you try and just start that motivation and that movement in the state, that's how we're going to drive compassionate communities across SA. So that's a bit of an overview of what we're doing in this space. What's next for compassionate communities in SA? Well, we're looking at prioritising or creating this priority for palliative care publication, which includes health, social, emotional and spiritual as well, and also the public health palliative care as well included in that. We're going to have hot topic webinars each quarter, which will focus on different policy initiatives, and one of them will be about public health palliative care as well. Compassionate Community Conversation Morning Teas, we'll be rolling these out across the state, and this will be having a bit of asset mapping in each of the local health networks across the state. We're doing this in partnership with the primary health networks to really support conversations. And the big part of this is sharing the results. We'll be sharing the results back to the councils, back to the community, back to everyone, so then you guys can drive the conversations further in your own space as well. So to find out more how to be involved, obviously I've got to do my job and say be a PCSA member. Membership's open at the moment. Encourage everyone to be a part of this, but organisations here as well. It's pretty cheap, $330 a year for membership. You also get 10 free individual memberships under that. So if you are committed to this space and want to keep up to date and be a part of this future movement in this area, really encourage you to try and push that opportunity to be a part of this collective voice. We've also got free e-news, social media and all of that sort of thing. So there's lots there on the website, but we're always available to have a conversation. So part of today is about learning and thinking about this space, connecting. So PCSA is part of that conversation and keen to keep connected with everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Shyla. It's really just great to see so much stuff that happens in that community space, and as I actually touched on before, you know, just the breadth. You've got the community space, you've got some of these peak bodies, non-government organisations, representative groups for different professions, and of course in hospitals as well. And so now we'll move on to, sorry, I've jumped on too far. The aged care space. So this is something that's been particularly close for us in the department, because we've been able to administer the funding under the Comprehensive Palliative Care in Aged Care project. That's that acronym which we just say CPAC because it rolls off the tongue easier. And so we'll hear from some of those projects now, as well as Office for Ageing Well and Council of the Ageing. Okay, and we didn't have a current photo of Lisa, but we Googled her and that's what came up. So, all right, I'll hand over to Office for Ageing Well.
Thank you, Adam. So I've got a bit of a croaky voice, so I'll do my best. You were supposed to have Kathy Williams today. She'll be here a little bit later. So I'm filling in for now. So thank you for having me. And yeah, I'm here to, I guess, set the state scene. So tell you a little bit about the Office for Ageing Well, if you haven't heard about us before, but also about some of the resources that we have that might help to support some of your work. So, Office for Ageing Well. It has 5 business units, and we deliver the functions under the Ageing and Adult Safeguarding Act, also the Retirement Villages Act, and as well we're the state lead for South Australia's Plan for Ageing Well. We've got an ageing policy unit, which is the unit that I sit in. We're responsible for developing and implementing the state plan. Other statewide strategies, we partner a lot with a range of government, non-government and community organisations, including especially with older people. And we also administer quite a lot of community grants. So I'll talk about a few of those projects, and I think you've already heard from some people that we've worked with today as well. We also have, just to let you know, the Business Services Unit and Seniors Card Unit. So they provide admin support for us, but importantly, the Seniors Card program, which has more than 400,000 Seniors Card members and 700 business partners. We also have the Adult Safeguarding Unit. So that unit responds to concerns about adults who may be vulnerable and experiencing abuse or mistreatment through the provision of free, confidential advice and support. They also can do a legislative response to reports of actual or suspected abuse, and that's for any adult vulnerable to abuse, including older adults and people living with disability. We have the Retirement Villages Unit. As I mentioned, they're responsible for administering the Retirement Villages Act and also the Retirement Villages Regulations. They also provide general information and assistance on retirement village matters, and they provide conciliation services to help resolve disputes between residents and operators. And lastly, we have the Aged Care Strategy Unit, which many of you might be aware of. They manage the Aged Care Assessment Program on behalf of the Australian Government, and they lead a range of projects and programs related to aged care, including aged care reform and dementia care reforms. So as I said, I'm here from the Ageing Policy Unit. So the focus on what I'm going to share with you today is a little bit about what older people have told us about end of life and how that feeds into our state plan, and also some of the resources that are here for you today. So how we feel about getting older impacts on our physical and mental health and well-being. We take a broad view of ageing well in the Office for Ageing Well, and we have our state plan that I mentioned. So this guides our work, and it was developed with input from many different older South Australians from a different range of backgrounds. So in 2019, 2020, there was 1,500, but we continue to check in with people as well. So our latest community perception survey, we had over 3,000 older people telling us about how they're ageing well and how they think things are going. So importantly, they told us that homes and community are important, that there's no place like home, and that our homes and communities must enable flexibility and choice and support us to live how we choose, no matter our age, needs or wants. They told us that meaningful connections are critical for a good life, where everyone has the opportunity to support and encouragement to maintain and develop their connections. And importantly, they told us that navigating change is part of growing older, but that older people should have the capabilities and support to remain an active participant throughout their life so that they can help to manage these transitions, and that really makes all the difference. So just a few Mythbusters for you. Did you know that over 630,000 South Australians are aged over 50? That 95% of people aged 65 and over live independently in the community? That only 1 in 4 people aged 85 and over live in residential aged care, many going there in the last phases of life? And that 70% of South Australians wish to die at home, but only about 14% are able to. There we go. So I'll take you back to our plan, and there's a bit in the vision that's particularly relevant for today, and it's that element of that people would like to be supported to die with dignity in line with their wishes. As a community, we have to open up the conversation about end-of-life choices, the limits of healthcare, and what we want for the end of our lives. As individuals, we have to plan to ensure that our end-of-life preferences are known and that they can be met. So again, a couple of quotes of what people told us that informed our plan. To be able to stay in my own home until the end, avoiding a nursing home, and to end my life on my terms. They also said dying peacefully, if necessary with voluntary assisted dying, which must be made legal in SA. Now, that was in 2019, 2020, so we know we've made some progress there, which is great. So since 2014, to safeguard the future rights of all adults, Office for Ageing Well have promoted the annual Plan Ahead Week. Some of you may have heard of this, used to be called Planning Ahead Week. In 2020, they had a bit of a refresh, and it's just known as Plan Ahead. So we promote this initiative all year round as a tool to safeguard all South Australians' future rights and make health, lifestyle, financial and organ donation wishes clear. And all the resources that I'll talk about today, most of them are sort of samples here, but you can go online and order them as well. I wanted to let you know that I know you heard from Jude earlier this morning. Sorry, Jude, we were a bit late, so we missed your presentation. But that the Office for Ageing Well and Health Services programs have been partnering with local governments to develop sustainable models led by community to support people to complete their own advanced care directive. So I won't read out all the councils up there. Looks like it got cut off a little bit, sorry. But basically we've been working with a range of councils, and then there's a few more councils coming on board in the next phase. So Adelaide Hills Council and working with the councils in Murray Beach and the Coorong, which is really exciting. So an important priority for our office and for older South Australians is to challenge and tackle ageism at systems, community and individual levels. Older people have rights. They have the same human rights as the rest of us, no matter their age or where they live. The right to autonomy and self-determination, the right to dignity and respect, the right to be safe from abuse or mistreatment. So today we really wanted to emphasise that we all have a role to play, and we know that ageism can be insidious, covert, and often we are not aware of how we ourselves may be contributing to it. It could be the language that we use to describe older people. For example, elderly is often used to describe people from 60 to 100, no matter their ability. When we talk with older people, even those who are 90 years old tell us that they do not consider themselves to be the elderly. This is not a term that they're identifying with. It could be talking to a carer and not the older person themselves, excluding people from the conversations about being involved in their decisions that impact them. It could be stereotyping older people as a homogenous group. So overriding or not respecting or upholding older people's rights, we know can lead to abuse or mistreatment, including social and emotional abuse. So you may have seen our current campaign for tackling ageism, which asks us all to think about how we treat the older people in our life. And again, we're really keen for people to take up these resources and have them in your workplaces and in mind when you're working with people. Another campaign that we have is the Respect Connect campaign, and that was co-designed with Aboriginal community to raise awareness about the rights of older Aboriginal people and the importance of respect for elders and connection and community. And I think that was a fitting theme with the Reconciliation Week this year as well. Again, you can find out more about the campaign and resources online, and we have a few samples here today. I won't have enough time today to talk to you much about age-friendly services, but we do have a dedicated website. Some of you that are attending today may have even engaged in some of those workshops and be implementing those things in your workplaces. But basically there is an online dedicated website. It was co-designed with older people as well as South Australian government agencies, and we used to deliver in-person workshops, but we're sort of transitioning to an online format, so it's a bit like Watch This Space. We'll be able to share a bit more in the future, but that also means we can get the word out a bit more and support you a bit better if that's what you're interested in. So like I said, really today was just like a touch point, a bit of a kind of bigger picture about the different parts that make up the Office for Ageing Well. I know that there'll be, I'm excited to hear the presenters that we're able to catch today. Kathy Williams, if you are wanting to touch base with her, the Manager of Ageing Policy, she will be here a little bit later in the afternoon. And like I said, resources and order forms are available on the website. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your showcase. Thanks for having me. Skip to the next.
Hi, everybody. So I'm going to talk about the comprehensive palliative care in aged care today. I'm just going to give an overview because Lisa MacDonald, who is the next speaker, will actually talk about the pilots in detail. So I'm sure everybody knows me. I'm Mariana Rich. I'm the manager of the end-of-life care team in SA Health. And I do everything but voluntary assisted dying. It's very important. Right, so the Comprehensive Palliative Care in Aged Care project is funded by SA Health and the Commonwealth Government. It's a match funding initiative, and it's across all jurisdictions in Australia. It's 7.65 million over 5 years. We are coming to our final year in 23-24, so we have a lot to celebrate. We have learned a lot, and we also very excited about in this final year ensuring that we invest in things that give us some kind of a pathway for the future, some legacy documents, some potential sustainability. I think Adam has alluded to that at the very beginning. So this project is really about training and upskilling palliative care offers in residential aged care facilities. And what SA Health did that was different than other jurisdictions is that we have given the money or kind of prioritized some of the money of the pilots that we wanted to run and we gave to the aged care sector rather than the palliative care sector. So that was something that we thought it was somehow an innovation, and I have to say it did pay off based on the evidence that we have so far. So also being able to do that kind of highlighted the untapped potential of embedding palliative care as a core skill within the aged care sector. It doesn't really sound like an innovation, but when you look across the aged care sector, there's different levels of palliative care capabilities. So for us to take the time to invest on that is something that is really impactful system-wide. We have invested in 3 main pilot projects: the hospice in the residential aged care, which was completed by Elder Care in February this year. And we also had the regional hospice in the residential aged care and added the regional GP shared care in aged care, which were done by Rural Support Services. Those are still in operation and have the final year in this next financial year coming up. So the model was really focused on staff training and ensuring that the facilities were equipped to provide end-of-life care. There was also a component of embedding some improved palliative care processes for identification of residents that were palliative within their business as usual, which is really important, and link those processes also with GP engagement. We really need the GPs to come on board and be able to own some of these process of case conferencing and identification and needs rounds that occur on a regular basis within the aged care facilities. Needs rounds was one of the key things that we have tested. Needs rounds is not necessarily a new concept. It's something that has been going on for a while. As Kate normally mentions, I think started in the ACT. Needs rounds is basically a way that we can provide a structured approach to identify and discuss palliative residents, and is an opportunity to enhance palliative care capability and skills. So basically by identifying a resident that's palliative, you kind of get a lot of the care staff that's around that patient together with the GP, and then you all discuss how you're going to better meet the needs of that individual for the next 6 or 12 months or whatever that person has in terms of end of life. Some of the enablers of the needs rounds were, internal capacity. You have to have some degree of internal capacity to run the needs rounds. You have to have staff available to do that. GP engagement, as I said, was really important. Relationship built with GPs. We have tested nurse-led models in the elder care pilot versus the medical consultant model in the RSS pilot, and that provided different outcomes. It's important to have clear processes for resident identification, because it will be the staff that will be doing that process, so they have to know exactly what they are looking for and how they're going to then, if identified, get the resident to benefit from a needs rounds. Development of action plans as a consequence of the needs rounds, and information sharing across the different members of the facility that are caring for that resident. Then I have a quote. Everybody loves quotes in this meeting. I'm very happy about it because I love quotes too. I have appreciated your assessment of the residents in your liaisons with family. There is a role for nurse practitioners in this situation, and I hope you continue in this underestimated and often difficult path. So that's a GP attending an elder care site needs rounds. So, I think we all mentioned that, everybody has a role to play, even in aged care facilities, can each, the different roles play, is there a role that they have to play in palliative care? The answer is always yes. So what's next for CPAC? So as I said, we're going to go into the last round of funding, and we have done an evaluation. No, we haven't done an evaluation. Flinders done an evaluation for us. Sarah is there, but we have commissioned an evaluation from Flinders of the pilot projects, and that gives really great insight on what worked, what maybe needs a little bit more thinking, and some areas that we can further explore in the future. And that's what we'll be doing in, from Monday onwards when the next financial year commences. So we want to continue investing in the hospice, in the residential aged care model. So we will continue funding the regional model being delivered by RSS. I think it's really important that it's a lot more challenging to deliver something in the region than it is in Metro. So we need to continue investing and figuring out how we can make this sustainable and to deliver more outcomes going forward. But we also been working with elder care to expand their model that they develop in the metro area to non-elder care sites. And that's something that's really exciting because that should create a kind of a package framework and tools and processes that we can then go and expand and roll it out to all the residential aged care facilities after 23-24 if priorities align. We are also finalizing some education on the run videos. These are 2 to 3 minute videos that it will be available. We'll be still discussing, but mainly through PalliAged app and website and perhaps other platforms as well. But these are really, so we're starting with 10 videos that would just really be targeted at carers and any staff working in residential aged care to troubleshoot simple things. So there is something about how to fix a NICU pump or how to do a hot towel wash. So things that can really benefit the sector in general. And the last thing, which is the bit that I'm most excited about, is that we are really looking into virtual models of palliative care in aged care. And there is a lot of opportunity to be able to expand and see if we can support the sector remotely. Obviously, COVID has given this great opportunity to invest in telehealth and in video conferencing. It develops some infrastructure that can now be used across the health sector to enable that. And are interested in perhaps exploring some virtual models of palliative care in aged care came from some conversations we had from the virtual care service. And I even have some stats. So basically, since the virtual care service program started, until early June, which was when we got those stats from them, 2,119 patients from residential aged care have been supported. From this total, until early June, 434 had died. But then that's what the bit that it's really caught us attention. From this 434, 222 died within 28 days of the virtual care service episode of care, and 28 died within 48 hours of the episode of care. So we don't know for sure, but it's very likely that a lot of those patients were calling, a lot of the care staff was calling virtual care service on behalf of a residence that was palliative. So, is there something that we can do there to, streamline or improve, increase awareness of virtual modes of palliative care? And that's really where we want to invest in the future. So I put the link for the comprehensive palliative care and aged care there. They do have midterm reports that tells you everything that is happening across all jurisdictions. It's really cool because it shows that everybody's doing something different and everybody has achieved a lot, but also learned a lot in this process. It's like kind of one-page summary, so it's very user-friendly, so I recommend if anyone has interested. But I will pass on to Lisa McDonald, who is actually give you a real flavour of what we've done.
Hi everybody, my name's Lisa McDonald. I'm a palliative care nurse practitioner. My substantive role is with Southern Adelaide Palliative Services, but at the moment I split my time between elder care and SA Health in the Rural Support Service, and I'm going to talk about both of those projects today. But first I'd like to acknowledge that we're meeting today on the lands of the Kaurna people, and we acknowledge and respect their ongoing and deep spiritual connection to land, air, sea, waters, community and country. We pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging, and also pay respects to the Cultural Authority of First Nations people visiting from other areas of Australia here today. Just a bit about elder care first. So first of all, I'm talking about the Hospice in our ACF project, which elder care was responsible for. Elder Care is a private, not-for-profit aged care provider, and we've been providing services in South Australia since 1959. We have 12 residential care facilities across Greater Adelaide and the Yorke Peninsula, and about 1,000 residents. There will be another facility coming online later this year in Goodwood. We have 200 self-contained independent living units. Elder care has a really strong values focus, respect, accountability and connection, which makes me quite proud. Elder care has long recognised palliative care as an integral part of care, and they actually employed specialist palliative care nurse practitioners prior to the implementation of this project. So the Elder Care Hospice in our ACF project, as Mariana said, was funded by joint state and Commonwealth funding. The project really recognises that the residential aged care sector has a large population requiring palliative care, and I think very often underserved by specialist palliative care. And one of the things that, since I've been working in aged care, has really struck me is that residential aged care facilities are very complex systems, and many of the people who are approaching end of life have very complex symptom problems as well as psychosocial problems. The project ran from October 21 to February 23, and there were 7 elder care sites included in this, and they were urban and peri-urban. The peri-urban ones were around Gawler and Mount Barker. So the major components of the project, it was actually quite a big project for us. A very big focus of it was on personal care workers. So we offered personal care assistant traineeships with a focus on palliative care training. And I guess that's coming from a place of really acknowledging the fundamental importance of our personal care assistants in providing excellent palliative care. In addition to the personal care assistant traineeships, we had a suite of education packages and face-to-face sessions. These were aimed at our existing elder care clinical leaders, RNs, ENs, personal care assistants, and also non-clinical staff. Personal care assistant trainees were also included in the additional education packages. We had some education for general practitioners who visit elder care, residential aged care facilities, and that was facilitated by a palliative medicine consultant. And we also had some education sessions for families of residents, particularly for those in memory support units. I guess as we all probably in this room know that a lot of people don't realise that dementia is a life-limiting illness, and that accounts for a large proportion of people in residential aged care. And we also worked on developing some grief and loss training and resources to support staff and families of residents. The resources that we developed were a combination of some training videos, face-to-face training, some lanyard cards. So the lanyard cards gave personal care workers in particular prompts about what to say when somebody is approaching end of life, what not to say, or what to say when somebody has died, so that they could just have a quick look before they go into the room and know not to say, they had a good innings. So it gives people appropriate things to say, because some of the feedback that we've had from personal care workers was the biggest thing they were worried about was they just didn't know what to say. They didn't know how to talk to people who were dying. We also developed some booklets for families, so what to expect in the last days of life, and another designed to be given to people after death on dealing with grief and loss. So the outcomes of the project for us, with the traineeships, we had 27 trainees who were employed. 23 of those completed the Certificate 3 in Individual Support, Aged Care, and as of December 2022, 16 remained employed at Elder Care. The additional on-site training that was provided for them showed major benefits, so that the on-site training focused on palliative care, and we noted an increase in knowledge about palliative care. End-of-life care went from 35% to 94%, and confidence in recognising signs of deterioration rose from 11% to 76%. The needs rounds, 299 residents were identified as palliative through the needs rounds, with an additional 307 residents who are identified outside those needs rounds. 51 case conferences arose from those needs rounds with residents and families to discuss and document future care wishes. The number of residents with documented advanced care plans increased from 399 to 622 at the participating sites during the project. And in the 12 months to April 2023, 93% of elder care residents died in their usual place of care, which compares to roughly 86% of aged care residents across the country. So learnings. The needs rounds. I guess I should point out that the needs rounds at Elder Care were a little bit different from the needs rounds that were pioneered by Calvary in Canberra. Our model used a nurse-led model from within the facility. So the specialist palliative care nurses who ran these needs rounds were our nurse practitioners and our nurse consultant, who were employed by Elder Care. The other aspect that I should point out is that GPs generally didn't attend the needs rounds. So nurses were asked to refer people to the needs rounds based on a set of criteria, the principal one being the surprise question. Would you be surprised if this person died in the next 6 months? The needs rounds have been so successful at Elder Care using this model that we have now rolled them out to all of our sites. And we're getting really good feedback from those sites. The traineeships for carers with the focus on palliative care were found to be effective, but they were very labour intensive. So now Elder Care is looking at various models for continuing with traineeship, a different form of traineeship in the future. Palliative care training for staff is crucial, and we have now integrated palliative care into mandatory update days and pre-onboarding with support from specialist palliative care nurses who are employed by the organisation. And the grief and loss resources have been really well received by families. So as Mariana mentioned, we're very excited that SA Health is funding the rollout of elements of this project to other non-elder care sites. So we've got 2 residential aged care facilities in the north of Adelaide and 2 in the south, who we'll be working with in the next 12 months to see if this model would work in another organisation, 2 of which have called communities. And one final comment about this project, which is another quote. A carer sought me out at one of our facilities when I was seeing somebody at Allambie a few months ago, and she said, I went to the training for palliative care and it should be compulsory for everybody. She said, I used to be scared to go into people's rooms when they were palliative, and now I'm not scared. I know what to say. So that to me warmed my heart. So as Mariana mentioned, Flinders University has done an evaluation of this and the Rural Support Service project. I'm not sure when that's going to be publicly available, but I'm happy to be contacted at Elder Care if you've got any questions about our project. Now, I'm sorry you get to listen to me again. So I also work with the Rural Support Service. So this project is called Regional Hospice in Residential Aged Care Facility. The project was funded from July 21 to June 2024, and it sits within the Rural Support Service. The project team consists of a palliative care nurse educator, a nurse practitioner, palliative care medicine specialist, and a pharmacist. The project is operating in 15 publicly funded regional South Australian RACFs, and there is representation across all of the local health networks within country. We have recently had one private, not-for-profit regional facility join us from Mannum. So the main components of this project are education, which is both face-to-face in the form of a day-long workshop to date. That may change in the future. And we're doing some virtual education as well for care staff and GPs. For the GP education, there was recently another ECHO program that SAPMEA facilitated and was run by the medical consultant. We have monthly palliative care needs rounds to discuss residents and with palliative care needs. And this is a very different model from the one that we ran at Elder Care. So this is attended by facility nursing staff, GPs, pharmacists. I'll speak a bit more about that in a tick. And also development of some grief and bereavement resources. So the needs rounds, as I say, were monthly with all of the facilities. They're conducted by Microsoft Teams. Because of distance, it's not practical to do these face-to-face like we have been doing at Elder Care. They're led by a palliative medicine consultant with input from a palliative care nurse, educator or nurse practitioner, and they're attended by the facility nursing staff, GPs and pharmacists. Now, the GPs and pharmacists are offered to payment for attendance because they're generally in private practice and taking time out of their private practice day to attend. It tends to we use the same referral criteria, so the surprise question. but they operate more like a case-based discussion with recommendations sent to the GP or the facility in a summary document, so a summary of what's been discussed with the recommendations, and also a medical letter sent to the GP. Not all of the facilities have GPs who attend. Some of them will just be the nurses attending. Some will have GP and pharmacy attending. So outcomes. The project isn't quite complete yet, although there has been some evaluation to date. In terms of preliminary outcomes, we've noted a reduction in the number of people being transferred to hospital in the last week of life. This was reduced from 16% to 9%. We used LDAC after death audits, which we did before the project started. We did a retrospective look at their LDAC after death audits, and we've been keeping data on that regularly throughout the project. On the LDAC after death audits, the reason for transfer to hospital in the last week of life, where symptom management was noted as a reason, reduced from 50% to 0%, which is kind of extraordinary. There was an increase in the percentage of residents who had team case conferences to discuss palliative care issues. And we've had really good feedback from the residential aged care facility staff and the GPs. Reflections. This is just so needed for regional South Australia. It's needed for aged care as well, but regional South Australia is very under-resourced in terms of specialist palliative care. We found the regional nursing staff to be incredibly engaged, and I have been so impressed with them. Sometimes we meet with them and we talk through a case, and actually all we can say is you're doing a great job, you're doing all the right things, but there's great value in that as well, because they say, oh, great, you know, it's just good to know that we're on the right track. But then, you know, there are other times where there have been very, very complex symptom issues where they really did need some palliative medicine input. So it's been really valuable from that point of view. I guess looking at the regional project, there are sustainability issues. I guess a medical specialist-led needs rounds is very beneficial, and in the evaluation, people commented on the specialised medical knowledge, a level of confidence, level of credibility in having a specialist there, but it's actually relatively expensive. So if that's not funded, then we need to think about other models. The participation of GPs and pharmacists was fantastic, but would it depend on ongoing incentives beyond the project. And as I mentioned earlier, not all sites had GPs or pharmacists who participated. I guess the other thing that I would, because I wear both hats, there's been less of a focus on personal care workers in this project, and that's something that we plan on changing in the coming year. We think there needs to be much more of a focus on educating the personal care workers, but also the non-clinical staff, because we know that in aged care facilities, you know, the receptionist gets to know all of the families who come through, and they stop and they have a debrief, and some of them feel like they're doing a bit of counselling there. But also housekeeping, maintenance, everybody gets to know these residents and their families and is impacted by the palliative care phase and by their death. So that's, I think, a really exciting area for us to focus on in the future. I guess the other thing to say is that for sustainability of this sort of project, I think that we really need to create a community of practice. We're planning on starting a palliative care linked nurse program starting in July this year, which will include all of our sites, nurses from all of our sites, but there is a broader there's broader work within SA Health on palliative care linked nurse programs in all sectors. So I think that's a really exciting area. Grief and bereavement resources are really needed. We're in the process of adapting the Last Days of Life booklet that was produced by Salin, with some amendments to make it more appropriate for residential aged care. So that's going to be rolled out in the coming months. And again, hopefully the Flinders evaluation will be available publicly at some point, and I'm happy to be contacted if anybody has any questions. Thanks.
Namani everyone. Hi, I'm Jackie Worm, working with COTA SA's Rainbow Hub. And COTA SA, or Council on the Ageing, is working with and for about 700,000 South Australians aged 50 plus, and we think that there's probably about 10 or 11% of that community is LGBTI plus. So interested in how we can work together, because we're a small organisation and we're trying to reach a lot of people. I too would like to acknowledge that we're meeting on Kaurna country and acknowledge any Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander peoples who are participating. I also acknowledge LGBTI people who have paved the way with their advocacy and activism, and that includes around having better deaths for people in our community. So I'm going to talk about sex and death, just to wake you up before lunch. And a story that I'd like to mention is one that came out in our project about someone who was in a small hospital. Their partner was dying inside and they were not allowed past the front reception area because they didn't have any paperwork in place. And that person said they never want that situation to happen for one of our community members again. So that gatekeeping role, I think, is something that we can all think about. Why a Rainbow Hub? There are many people in our community, maybe a third, who hide their sexuality when accessing services or delay seeking help, which of course leads to greater costs and harder for people in their support group. Many of us experience poorer physical and mental health than non-LGBTI people, and the effects of discrimination multiply as we age. So of having less employment opportunities, having to hide throughout our lives, less housing, stable housing, and that's especially for transgender community, that's often more of an issue. And we're 7 times more likely to live alone, or be alienated from family. So a lot of the supports that are taken for granted in the wider community aren't necessarily available to us. So our response is to build community. We work with volunteers and a couple of staff part-time. And we're about promoting inclusion, celebrating achievements. We have regular lunches and a newsletter people can sign up for. Allies very welcome. And we work in partnership for advocacy and support. We also offer Silver Rainbow diversity and inclusion training for staff and volunteers. But largely we often feel invisible, and we look at services and we don't see any signs of how welcoming they are, and so that can contribute to the delay and our community being underserved. So Rainbow Horizons was a project that we got support for, facilitating conversations in our community across generations, because we don't necessarily have children to rely on, and also we want to educate and bring younger people with us. We worked with them, so we built an intergenerational compassionate community model for our community, and we engaged with a range of service providers. So that was people working in palliative and other health, advocacy organisations, doulas, funeral directors, quite an incredible range. And we're very to mention, of course, Office for Ageing Well, SA Health, thank you. Great to work with them. But yes, we were very drawn to the social approach through the idea of compassionate community. Working with individuals is important, but I think that is key for us. We benefited South Australians through increased awareness and confidence in end-of-life planning, developing a model for compassionate communities, and increased links with a diverse range of providers. This is from one of our regional focus groups we held around the state. And by building community, I think we reduced the cost of delayed services and of isolation. This model is a bit hard to read, but we've got a report about to come out where you'll be able to see it more exactly. And we had a trial group that met and talked about what might this model look like after a co-design process with providers and community. And I'd like to acknowledge Shannon Beresford, who's here from the trial group and still actively involved, and we'll be running a Dying to Know Day event called Know Before You Go on the 8th of August. And also we're running an event during the Feast Festival, a memorial event to honour people in our community, because sometimes I've been to funerals and it's like I don't recognise that person that was just just had their funeral. But yeah, we're about basically looking at what entry points might we access people through, how can we involve them, get them involved as volunteers, have regular places, social events they can come along to and exercise some of that stealth health activity where people come along to be social and then they find out about end of life along the way. So looking at all sorts of different approaches we can take. Recommendations we've come up with are riffing on what other people have said, better resources to regional health to facilitate dying in place, ongoing investment in end-of-life consumer education, financial investment to support some of these efforts to mature, and for providers and other stakeholders, asking people to commit to ongoing education, especially around transgender and intersex healthcare, which there's less awareness about, and it's a very changing space. And a lot of our community said, we end up going to see a professional and we end up educating them as quite a bit of the time that we have with them. So it's important, we feel, for people to educate themselves and build that into their systems. We're asking LGBTI community organisations to draw on our model and help people plan and be supported once again throughout their different activities and touch points, not just leaving it to the traditional settings. And diversity training, something that we can offer to support all organisations. This is a resource I came across, I Just Want to Be Me, which comes out of the UK Hospice Organisation, and is a really good resource for looking at transgender palliative care, and that's on our website along with other resources. And there's another resource coming up soon to be published next month from Palliative Care Victoria, looking at palliative care from multicultural and multi-faith perspectives, LGBTI perspectives. And our report is to be launched hopefully this week. Rainbow Horizons, Don't Leave Me This Way. And it's only 20 pages, but there's lots of information in there. Be a champion for inclusion. Count us in your surveys in what you're doing, because being counted then leads to being resourced. Consult us and talk to your colleagues about servicing our community. Read and share our report. Put it through your networks and newsletters and socials, and promote our Rainbow Hub, because we're a good contact point, and we can bring people in, keep them in touch. We can send our newsletter out hard copy, it's not just online. And we're a source of information and connection, as well as partnership. And if you want to pass me your business card, I'll make sure that you receive our report, and look forward to opportunities to work with you all. Thank you.
Okay, great, thank you. So, look, that brings us to the end of our speed dating. So, I don't know where the next steps go with that joke. It could, I won't go any further. What an amazing broad range of projects, a broad range of organisations, but also the people. So, everybody here. So, just another round of applause for all of our speakers today. Before we go to lunch, if you go to the back of the book, there's actually a test that you can fill out. I'm joking. It's the contact details from all of the people who from the grants who presented today. And I guess I want to point that out, because what we wanted to see is people connect. Just like we said, just drop off your business card, give me your phone number, give me your email, let's connect, let's take this further. If there's an idea that you heard today that could translate into your organisation or opportunities to work together, that's the benefit that can come out of a session like today. We are now going to have lunch in the breakout room. So we've done a great job of keeping to time, which is excellent. So let's go grab some lunch. If we can come back in here pretty much by, say, 1:45, get started, then, we might be able to get an early minute at the end if we can work through the sessions. This afternoon, then, is that really that opportunity to hear from you. I know that Palliative Care SA are super keen to be capturing the priorities, as Charlotte introduced earlier. They've done a bit of it yesterday, they've done a bit of it today, they've got multiple ways in which they're trying to bring together what are the priorities for South Australia at the moment. It's a typical roundtable butcher's session, get the texters out, but I'll just give you a story about it. This is the power of butcher's paper, right? Because it was in November 2020 in this room that Kate Swettenham, who can't be here today, had led a very similar event to this, and Mark will remember it. Mark was part of the group designing it and getting it up and running, to talk about how do we invest in aged care, in palliative care in aged care. And we had the butcher's paper and we put it up on the windows, and very strongly out of that came the number one priority, which was we need to invest in traineeships. The workforce situation that's happening over these years, and we're still facing, that's something we want to focus on. And it was so great then to sit here 3 years later and see Eldercare investing in 27 traineeships, which led to 23 people completing that, which led to 16 people still working in Eldercare. And as I said, that's the power of doing this type of stuff. So please, go to lunch, come back, and keep that in mind, because I would love to be here in 2026 saying the same thing again. All right, thank you, guys.